Hello there, my friend. My name is April San Pedro. If you've been here, thank you so much for being here again. And if this is your first time to be here, welcome. And if you love anything to do with paper, stationery, art, and process in between, well, I hope you'd find something you fancy in any of my videos, and I'm so happy that you're here with me today. In this video, I want to share with you a little do-it-yourself journal. Now, if you've been following along, you've probably saw in my previous vlogs my process when it comes to making some of my stationeries. So I do have a journal, stickers, some other paper goods. So a few years ago, I started making my very own traveler's notebook regular size journal because at that time, I still couldn't justify myself buying a real Midori traveler's notebook because to me it was out of my budget. So I've decided, since I have lots of papers in my studio, I designed my own journal. Now, after that, I've been enjoying making journals, and so every anniversary a few years ago, I tried to make a new version or a new design for my traveler's notebook. It's called pandagdag. It's a Filipino term for refill. Let me show you an example. So these are a few of the journals that I actually made in the studio. This is the second version. So after I was able to make my very first version, which was 401, it has different kinds of paper inside. So after that, I decided to make a different one, which is just a plain paper with my very favorite kind of paper that I use for my planners as well, which is called the Blanco. So I made it into a regular size journal like this one. It comes with 3 different paper types. So it has plain, grid, and dotted. And then later on, every anniversary, as I mentioned a while ago, I try to make a new version or a new design for the journal. So I had this 404. So it has a matte and recyclable cover with a vellum inside. I'm not sure if I still have this though, but I think this is one of my favorites based from the cover that I made. And then I believe this is the recent one, which is the 406. I have one in between, like the 405 and then 403, which I just don't have with me right now. So this is the recent one for the 14th anniversary. For this year, which I celebrated the 15th year, I didn't come up with any new journal for this year. So this is the last and the recent design that I have. So anyway, last video I shared with you my travel journal that I bought with me when we went to Singapore and Malaysia with my family. Since it was my very first time to use an A6 journal, I didn't carry the A6 size in my journal lineup for artisan papery because I don't know how to use it before. So it would be quite difficult for me to share the A6 size if I myself don't know how to use it. So I did not carry an A6 size before. When I used this last year, that's the only time I realized how handy this is and how convenient to just have a very small A6 journal. Now I remember I did try using an A6 journal with Hobonichi, the day-free journal. So that was my very first A6 and I had a hard time actually using that one at first. But later on, I get the hang of it. It was just a home journal that I use for my faith journaling. So with this one, it was different because I brought it with me the entire time we were traveling, and it was the only journal that I had with me, and it was most used, and I would really say I really enjoyed using it. But the reason why we're gonna have a little tutorial in this video is because since I don't have an A6 journal with me, I decided that I might want to try to make or design my very first A6 journal for artisan papery. But in the meantime, this is just a mock-up or my personal journal that I'll be using. So also, I'll be going on another trip with my family. So that's the reason why I was inspired to make another A6, because other than that, I am still not convinced of using an A6 journal for my memory keeping or for other journaling other than travel journal. Because we're having another trip coming very soon, I've thought of making my very own and use some of the things that I have in my studio. So first, let's get on with the materials that we will be using. So if this is your first time to make a journal, I tell you it's very easy. But in my case, I am very much particular with the paper or with the pages that I use, or even with the cover. So I am not very particular with the size, or like I am just sometimes eyeballing the measurement of the journal or most of the things that I teach here in my channel. But what I am really more particular with is the kind of paper that I use, because I love the writing experience. I love the idea that I can play with so many medium in my journals or in my planners. So that's why paper is one of my very essential when it comes to journal making. So in this journal, I want to try a different kind of paper, because all my journals in the regular size, I am using the same paper, just with different kind. There's a dotted grid or just the plain, but nonetheless the paper is always the same, except for the cover. So I've thought of using a different paper for regular size refill as well, but I thought, I wanted to try the A6 this time, so might as well try a different paper with this size of journal. A few months ago, I believe it was early last year, I bought a Tomoe River in loose sheets. That's because I was in search of a journal that has a Tomoe River that doesn't look like a planner. I've tried the Hobonichi, the Midori, Hibino, but they all have a dual purpose aside from journaling. So there's some monthly pages for that, and I couldn't really find the right fit for me, especially for the regular size notebook. And so I thought, why not just buy a loose sheet and try to make my very own. Now the Tomoe River loose sheet is quite a bit pricey, but I would say it's pretty much reasonable, since you're gonna get around 100 sheet. I'm gonna try to link where I got this if you're from the Philippines. So if you want to make your own journal with Tomoe River as well. So I believe even the loose sheets might be a bit expensive, you get the most of it, because 100 sheets can actually make more journals. But if you're really not into the making of the journals, then I would really suggest that you just go buy and look for a journal that fits well to your budget, because it won't just make sense buying a loose leaf unless you just want to fold this into half, which makes an A5, I believe, an A5 notebook, and that's it. You have a very simple journal, which actually a very nice idea. But in my case, I want to make an A6 size journal, and so I hope this one will have well, there you go. Yeah, I can make at least 2 A6 in 1 A4. So yeah, it's very cost effective. So this one is a white color in 52 GSM or 52 grams. There's also another one in cream, and they also have a thicker GSM, probably I think 64 GSM. So I got the thin one, I believe, because I really like the idea that it's crinkle and stuff like this. I'm hoping it's gonna be the same thing. So alright, other than this, I have this sampler cover that I did supposedly for another refill design, but it was just a mock-up and never pushed through. So I've thought of using it instead of just getting another kind of paper. I just can't decide yet which color I'll be using, but nonetheless, this is the cover that I will be using for the cover of the A6. Now, if you're wondering, this one is the size of a regular notebook, but I will just figure out how to cut it, since this one is relatively bigger, so it would be easier to just adjust the size. So that is the basic materials I will be using. Of course, you will be needing a cutting mat as well. If you don't have this, just make sure your table is secure enough when you're cutting. And then you will need ruler. I love using a cutter instead of a trimmer, but if you have a trimmer and you're more comfortable with that, it's easier than this. If you don't have both, you can just use scissors, so you'll probably need ruler and a pencil just for the measurement. And what I have is a long stapler. This is what I use for my journals. If you like to give a little more effort to your journal, you can stitch it up, since it's gonna be very thin, so it's gonna be easy to just hand stitch it. But I just want to use a stapler. If you don't have the long one, you'd probably have a difficulty getting through the stapler in the middle of your paper, because I'm not sure if this will fit entire stapler, but if you have a longer one, that would be much better. So if you don't have a stapler, stitching would be another idea, or maybe you can just clip it out or something. So those are the things that we need, and now let's start making the journal. I'm gonna use this as my guide for the measurement and the pages as well. So I checked it out. It has 16 papers, so that gives you around 32 spreads, and times 2, so that's around 64 pages. So I think so like, to me, I think this one is, the pages is good enough. Like the 16 papers is good enough. The paper is thick, so it's kind of thick even without any embellishments or any photos inside. Although even though it's thick, I believe it still holds the journal very well. I'm okay with 16 pages. However, the Tomoe River is very thin, and so I was thinking I'd probably add more pages. And since I want to use this journal for this travel alone as my sole journal, and I want to stick as much ephemeras and whatever that I want to use it on, so I probably use more papers with this instead. This is actually my first time to check this Tomoe River, and I actually got this pad or this loose sheets with me last year, I think. So that's why right now my goal is really to maximize all the stash that I have instead of buying some more, because I just wanna buy less and use more of what I have. I have here with me 15 sheets. So since an A4 can make up to A6 size, I'm just gonna eyeball this one because I don't want to compute. A4 has a different measurement, is more of like a millimeter or centimeter kind of, the measurement is more of like that, and I am more comfortable with inches. So below inches, I'm having a hard time computing that one. So I'm just gonna fold it in half and then cut it in the middle. I forgot to mention that you will also be needing a paper clip, bull clip, or a simple paper clip will do, just to hold your paper together while you're cutting it, just like so. Clip them on opposite edges. Don't worry so much if you think you cannot cut this properly or accurately. You can still correct it later on, the edges. It's just a personal journal, so it doesn't really matter. But if you're planning to sell this, or you're gonna give it out or something, then a trimmer or a big cutter, which we have, would be more accurate when it comes to cutting, and it will definitely look more professional if you do the cutting right. I'm just aligning it on my cutting mat so I would know if I am on the right measurement. A heavy ruler, which in my case I'm using a metal ruler, would be more advisable because it gives weight to your cutting surface, which makes it less movable, or it slides less compared to a plastic ruler or doesn't have a weight on it. I hope that makes sense. Okay, if you're not comfortable with just a fold, you can make your measurements with a pencil and a ruler instead of folding one sheet into half. But in my case, like I mentioned a while ago, I just like eyeballing. And the trick with using a cutter is you don't have to put so much effort, which I normally noticed with some people who use cutter. You don't need to put so much pressure on your left hand if you're right-handed, or on your right hand while you're cutting, because it will tire you down and it will move your ruler and your cutter or the paper if you put too much pressure while you're cutting it. So the trick is you do it slowly and less pressure, but do it repeatedly until you reach the end of the paper, like this one. If you want to make this as a business, if you want to use just a manual cutter, if you don't want to invest on a ream cutter yet, it will really make you so tired to cut so many journals if you put so much pressure while you're cutting. So if you do the trick, like just doing it slowly and repeatedly, you will be okay. Okay, so here we go. We now have the A6 loose sheets, and technically this is around 30 pages or 30 sheets because we had a 15 A4. Okay, so next one is we're gonna fold it into half, one by one. Now I would really suggest to fold this one by one, or one at a time, instead of just folding it all at once, because folding it one by one will give you an accurate fold instead of you just folding it all at once like this. Plus it's gonna make your spine, or this side of the sheet where the folded part is, more thinner compared to just folding it all together. So I'm just gonna fold it one at a time. Here we go. I'm done with folding each pages. I folded them one by one, thus making it more accurate when it comes to having the precise fold rather than just folding them all at once. So now we're done folding, we have to put them all together. So this is just actually the part where it is a bit tedious. So we have to do this manually and repeatedly, but it's also part of the process or the fun of making your journal. If you're doing this with you're aiming for 20 pages or 20 spreads, then all you need is a 20 paper, which is about this thin. So as you can see there, then you'll be done quicker. But in my case, I want to do a 60 spread, so this is about 30 papers. Here are the 30 sheets of paper, and then as you can see, even though this is already 60 spreads, it's still very thin, well, at least to me. Now if you compare it with this one, although this is not totally accurate because it has ephemeras already inside, so this is really a bit chunky compared to this. But if you noticed here, the spine, this one is already thick and this has only like 16, so like 32 spreads, unlike with this has 60 spreads. So we're just gonna set this aside because we're gonna cut the cover first. Now this is what I mentioned a while ago, that don't worry so much about this yet because we're still gonna cut this after. As for the cover, I'm thinking of using this one, the blue one. And since the paper is more for regular size, I'm just gonna cut the bottom part first according to the height of the A6. There's a margin here from the paper, so I'm just So I'm gonna leave a little margin here because there's no more print over there. And then this is where I'm gonna measure it. So it's best if you measure it with a cutting mat, or if you have a ruler, that would be also best. I would like to leave an extra margin just so for a little bit of error. So I can see that I can already cut here, but I want to add extra here. So same thing on this side. I'm gonna cut the cover. Again, you don't need to put so much pressure. Just do it repeatedly. There you go. I do have an excess on this side of the paper, but I'm just gonna leave it as it is because we need to cut the entire side, this part, later on. So I'm just gonna cut it together with the pages. So I want to use this creasing board. Since I already have a mark here, I'm just gonna follow it through. If you don't have a creasing board, don't worry about it. You can just eyeball it. I would prefer eyeballing it, but for the sake of giving you more ideas, just in case you're gonna have fun doing the journal and you might want to do this as a side hustle, you have an option what you can use to enhance your journals. Same thing with the cutter. I'm doing this repeatedly with a very low pressure so I won't get tired. So here, I hope you can see it in the camera. You can see that there's a crease, or here, this is more accurate. Okay, so here we go. Now we have her and the pages, and then I know I have a margin here, so I'm gonna move my paper or my pages all the way down here, just so I'll have more room for error. Okay, this is where I'm gonna clip them together. Now I notice the 30 papers really quite thick if you're just gonna do this stapler. So you really have to be a bit careful that you are gonna staple it right in the middle, because it's definitely gonna move since it's a bit thick. To test out once it's folded so it doesn't bulge. Also, if you're gonna do this professionally, it would be best to have an extra paper before you clip your cover and the pages so that the clip won't give any mark. But this one, since I'm just doing it for personal use, it's all good. So those are also the extra things that you need to consider if you're gonna do this professionally or as a side hustle. Okay, so I think I'm good with this one. I'm just gonna align it more. Yeah, there you go. Next is I'm gonna get my stapler. Is the reason why you will be needing a long stapler, because you need to through the entire journal, so the teeth or the part where you need to staple on will reach this part. Okay, so I want two staples to the edge. Okay, so here, now I notice that 60 pages or the 30 papers is really thick if you're just gonna be doing a staple bind kind of journal. So I would probably suggest to keep it at 40 so it would have lesser errors. Since I'm using a Tomoe River, it's gonna be costly if, let's say, you're gonna do this for a side hustle. I actually want to use my ream cutter for this one, so I'll cut it really straight. But for the sake of having a tutorial, let's get this on. To get the exact measurement for the A6, so this is how cutting mat would be very handy because you will have markers in case you want to cut them already. So now I have a marker that I will be cutting on this side. So here, there you go. So it's around 8. My marker would be this one, the 8.5 inch. But of course, I'm cutting in the middle, so it's always best to have the right measurement with you. But since I am eyeballing this one, then I am just using my cutting mat as my guide. Remember, this is really thick already, so the pressure of cutting it with very light one would be so helpful at all. Would be very helpful. Okay, and then the side part. Okay. Technically, when you're cutting with a folded journal, it's definitely not the right size because it's already folded, plus a margin for some errors or discrepancies. So it would be best to search for the right size of the journal. So like in this case, what is really the right size for A6, and then from there you can just manage to measure it properly. Okay, so here we go. Now, since this is a mock-up and technically not right measurement for the cover, you can see that this part is really not in the middle part of the journal, but I don't mind right now because I am just so happy how it turned out. Plus, since this is still just a mock-up. So this is the very first A6 journal that I made. I am quite happy with it. In this case, I'm getting a little bit OC with it. You know what? It's fine. I'm just gonna take it as a win or like a learning curve that since I'm doing this as a mock-up, then I would know how to adjust it next time. So yeah, this is quite thick if you asked me for a journal. I'm hoping like if I put a lot of ephemeras can handle this, but that's also part of the experiment because if I'm gonna make a journal for artisan papery, like for this size, I would know how much paper or how much sheets is ideal for this one in case for traveling or in case you want to put a lot of ephemeras and photos inside. So as you can see here, this is the A6 journal that I had, and this is the one that I made, and I am really happy and quite excited. I'm actually gonna test this out before I'm gonna use this one. So this will be the journal that I will be using for our upcoming travel. Okay friends, I hope this tutorial was easy for you, or if not, do let me know in the comments below if there are some things that it's quite hard to understand. I'll try my best to explain it further. So anyway, this is the journal. I am so happy. If you try this tutorial with you, you'd be happy also with the output. Of course, just a little bit of disclaimer, like if it kind of looked easy, that's because I've been making journals or other stationery products for quite some time now, so the cutting is a bit easy for me already. So if this is your very first time to make a journal, please leave some room for errors or from a little bit of frustrations, but I assure you it will be worth it. Or just look at it as a learning experience always, that you get to learn a new skill or you get to make your own notebook. So it's like when I was still in college or probably younger, I was already making my own notebook because at that time we couldn't really afford nice notebooks, so I tried to make my own. Because of that learning experience that I had when I was young, I get to do it this time and sell my own stationery and make my own journals, and it really makes my heart so warm seeing other people are also using the journals that I have. So yeah, that's it. thank you so much for watching up until the end. And if you want to see more of my process from making some of the journals from my previous anniversaries or stickers, maybe you can check out my vlog playlist, and they're all there. I will be sharing how I will be using this journal on our travel, so stay tuned for that. And I'm just so grateful that you are here with me, you watch up until the end. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you again on my next video. Bye!